This is the 1976 Disco Nova. She needs more power, and we're going to fix it. Let's get into it. When we say power on this car, I mean power. This thing is supposed to have a 100 amp alternator, and I thought that it was a Power Master. And sometimes you can be wrong in your assumptions. This looks like it's chrome. Everybody knows chrome won't get you home. But it's just a, looks like a cheap raw Chinesium alternator. But it's been on here for about 12 years. And it's held up just fine. I used to keep this engine clean. It's starting to look kind of rough. It's not horrible. But since I turned this camera on, every car in the county has decided they're going to drive by. So there ain't much I can do about the highway noise. So let's get it in the shop here, and we'll take a look at what we're gonna put back on this thing. Before you do anything with electrical systems on a car, always make sure you take the negative battery cable off. And this one's got a giant bolt in it because I couldn't find one that would fit in these threads right. So it's got a 9/16 bolt. Remove that. I hate side post batteries, but that's what this car had, and that's what it wound up with. You can also see here to the side, we were out driving around this thing, and the fan relay melted, which is over here. And this has got one of those Durali fans, and they draw a lot of juice. And this car originally had like a 63 amp alternator, and I think this is supposed to be 100 amp. But this alternator just really pulls the juice. I mean, not alternator, but electric fan. Pulls the juice, and it kept melting relays. So what we wound up doing was putting this switch on to send it straight to ground and bypass the relay to make the fan run all the time. Of course, all that done was made the battery run down faster. And the alternator wasn't keeping up. It gets really hot. It's hot right now, and it's only been running just a couple minutes. And it really puts a load on it. I doubt that it's even 60 amp, that alternator. It's probably, it looks like maybe it's a factory. But I'll get some wrenches, and we'll take this alternator off here. I'm not worried about the paint laying. This paint's all busted all to pieces. So laying the wrenches there is no big deal. Well, that sure done it. It's a fairly new belt. For some reason it doesn't line up exactly right. It wears on one side of the pulley. The pulley is sharp. It's like the alternator sits back just slightly. So we're going to try to correct that. I might have to grind just a little bit off this or put a spacer down here. This is supposed to be bolted to the alternator, and it's not. Get a little 7/16 for that. Well, things have escalated. I had to go get some parts. It's been about 3 hours since I took the alternator off. I had a bunch of stuff to do. This is the new PowerMaster alternator. I believe it's 150 amp. That's what we ordered anyway. Here's a little test card. Idle is 107, cruise is 140, top end 160. So it's probably going to stay around 107 at idle, which is great. So that was tested. This is the thing that's different is this is a 1-wire. I mean, it has the plug for a 3-wire. And this thing here, this Chinesian one, it's just smoked. I believe it's shorted out at one time or another. It's got black all out the back. And it worked a little bit when we were testing it the other night. I never did say what really happened. My grandson planned on taking it to a car show last weekend. He got it out. And we had to jump it. And then he got it home. We thought it would be charged. And he had to jump it the next morning. We switched batteries out. I had another good battery here. And it lasted until the battery ran down. Then he had to jump it again. And every time I voltage tested it, I was getting about 13.5 volts with this alternator. But every time he would drive a little bit and come back, this thing would be smoking hot. And I wouldn't be getting anything. But I could watch the battery drop. So there was no output. And it's really hard on these old cars when you leave them sitting. And you don't run them all the time. Every time you start it up and drive it, this alternator is just going to have to work if you don't have a battery maintainer on it. It's really got to work to charge it up. And they don't like that. They don't like to go from dead to try to charge. They're not for that. They're just to maintain the power and keep the battery maintained. They're not designed to charge the battery up fully from dead every time you get in it. So that's hard on these things. So a person really needs, on an old car, they need a battery maintainer. But I've got to... This alternator has different instructions with it. You can see right there. Look at this. It's almost like it's been arcing from not getting a good ground in this aluminium head. That's not oil. It's just some kind of like powder. And this battery had boiled over at one time. Not this battery, the battery that was in it. And I've had it on charge. I've had it on this Optima maintainer. And this is a 2020 battery, so it's only about 3 years old. And it's not even 3 years old. Yeah, I guess it is. In April, it's been 3 years old. So this little thing here, this Optima charger, it's not only just a charger, it's also a maintainer, and it's showing 100%. But it took it 2 days to get this battery back to 100%. And I'm going to do a test on it and see if the cranking amps. When I done a test on it when it was low, it said replace battery, but I've seen that before when I put the battery tester on it. When I put it on charge, it usually says good battery. We've got a couple to choose from. We've got a Hilltop Optima. It won't stay charged, but if you keep a charger on it, it's good enough to drive with. Looks like all the Bondo's coming. Well, the battery went down when I was talking. But I was saying it did boil the other battery over when it was, I don't know if it was overcharging or just struggling, what's going on. But this new alternator, I want you to look. This is the wire that was on it. Factory, and it goes back in there and goes over to a bunch of other little gom of stuff. But it looks like it's got like an idiot light wire. And then this is the main alternator wire, and it's tiny. So I've got to do away with that. And I went and picked up these. It says you need to use 6/0 wire, I think, on the 150. 150 use, not 6/0, 6 gauge. 6 gauge wire. And I went and got some 6 gauge, but all they had was black. So I'm going to put some red ends on it. And I'm going to run the long one down to the starter, which I believe you can run it straight to the battery. And that runs off of this big terminal here. And the other one, you can see that it had this little tiny terminal. And this was a 3-wire, of course. And they also said where you bolt your bottom bolt on to put a ground strap, which I'm going to do. I'm going to put a 6/0 or 6 gauge ground strap from the back of this alternator down to the block on the steel part instead of the aluminium. And we'll see, we'll go from there. Let me get these cables made up and we'll see what happens. Also, I got my Weasel Whiz in the mail today. Watch West Work uses this stuff, and I think it's just a cool novelty to have around the shop. When you need a superior penetrant, a multi-purpose lubricant, and a pinpoint string, reach for the Weasel. I like how he's peeing on your bolts. I just think that's cool. You can get this stuff online. That's the only place I've seen it, from their website. Weasel Whiz. Just get yourself a can today. Never noticed it before, but my little cables are die-hard. Got them in advance. But they're 6 gauge, supposedly. I got my little red caps on here. So I guess probably have to jack this car up and try to get to the starter. Okay, I got that on there. That just barely fit. Need a bigger cap for it. It's clear and everything good. That won't hardly go down on there. But it's called a 1-wire alternator, but for some reason they tell you to put 2 on it. They want a ground strap to the block, and then this one to the starter. See if we can get over here and get it on. I decided to put this loom on here. Take this bolt out. I wonder why it's threaded in from the back. We go in the front. No. This thing looks like it's reconditioned, the way it's been sandblasted. That doesn't fit. Yeah, it's got some rough threads in it. Been sandblasted. So, take this bolt out. Get this out of the way. Just fish this down towards the frame. I decided to put this plaque wrap on here. Right down through there. Well, I don't know if I can get to that bolt with the alternator on. Let's think about this. Okay, I got it on there. The ground wire, I don't know what it's hitting. I got the ground on there, the little ground strap. It's a little long, but it'll be okay. And there's our hot right against the fuel filter. That's a great place for something to be steaming hot, like that alternator was blistering hot. And that fuel filter's laying right on top of it. Great. Have to try to fasten that out of the way somehow. Okay, now we've got to get the hot wire back there to the starter and route it out of the way. Okay, so it doesn't get into any of the heat from that header. I guess I could probably wire tie it right to this battery that's strapped to the frame, battery wire. And looking at it, the alignment doesn't look bad. Doesn't look great, but doesn't look bad. I'll have to get the belt on there and take a look at it. Okay. When you get that on there, they say to put a socket on this bolt and try to turn it clockwise. And if it slips, you have to tighten the belt up more. Let me find a socket for it. Okay, do what they say. Put it on here. And it's backwards. And turn it clockwise. If it doesn't turn the motor, see, that's too loose according to them. So it has to be tightened up more. Wish I had a little table laying around here somewhere. Man, that's hard to move. How tight is tight enough? Now, I can't get it any tighter, but it's still sleeping. They said it should turn the whole motor when it's tight enough. That just seems excessive. Now I do have to tighten the power steering pump up. Actually, the power steering is supposed to have 2 belts. Man, that's sloppy. That's got to be tightened up. That takes Allen wrenches. Well, somehow, through the magic of television, fiddling with my power steering pump, I made it leak. So that was fantastic. At some point, I want to get rid of this electric fan and probably put the factory fan back on it. But I've got to find a, that's broken. I have to find a shroud that'll fit this somewhere. I think I have one, but who knows. But I think I've got everything ready to go. Now I got to jack it up and get under there and put the cable on. Well, I'm underneath the Disco Nova. There's the monster transmission. There's the monster torque converter. Check this out. Look at that torque converter bolt. Well, if I get this light to work, check this out. I can move it with my fingers. That is loose. How's this thing even been going down the road? So I gotta recheck all those and tighten them up. I mean, that was almost out. And here's our wire that we've got to put on our starter. I gotta feel around here and see if I can barely get under this car. I've got it jacked up, but I'm kind of a big dude. But I've been looking at the frame. Got a little bit of seepage here on the transmission. The headers have lost all their coating. The new bushings and springs, everything looks really nice. The calipers. Looks like our paint's burning off the block up there around the headers. So, let me see if I can fiddle around and get this bolt done. Bolt loose. Wow. That's really loose. Probably have to Loctite these. Okay, got the torque converter bolts tight. Just one of them was tight. The other two was loose. One of them felt like it might have been watered just a little bit. I'm going to throw some wire ties on these hot cables. Try to keep them away from these headers. And they even brought some clippers so I could clip them off. But I'll see you back up top. Now, we've got a one-wire alternator, and it's wired directly to the starter. And then it's got a ground directly to the block. But what do you do with all these leftover wires? And this is your main hot wire. And these are ones that's just basically for your idiot light. And I guess they stimulate it or whatever they do. But this thing is supposed to charge with very little excitement. It just needs to be revved a little bit to charge. I think they'll rev it idle. I mean, charge it idle. But I'm just going to put shrink tube over top of this And I'm going to fold this over here down in the fender out of the way for now. I'm sure I can remove it, but I want to put an entire wiring harness in this car at some point. But for now, I'm just going to put a shrink tube over it, seal it up real good, and try to tuck it out of the way. Voltage we got. 14.5 volts at a really low idle. So we don't need those extra wires. Doesn't need an exciter wire. It's just sitting there barely running and it's 14.5 volts. Let me turn the electric fan on and see what it does. Still 14.5 volts with the fans running. 14.3. And the thing's just barely running. It's making that much voltage. That's pretty awesome. Pretty smooth. Don't get the whining that we had with the other one. This one puts out enough juice without even trying. Next thing I got to do is get inside there, and I got to come up with a ground underneath the dash. Like I said, I'm going to put a whole new wiring system in this thing. I didn't really check to see if anything still worked. I don't know what I had wired into that alternator wire. It seems like everything still does. One thing that didn't work before was the amp gauge, but I believe it's everything under the dash has lost to ground. Amp gauge is still not working. Oil pressure and temperature is working. Radio works. Radio's working. RPMs, it looks like it is. Yeah, it's bouncing. It's also nice to have the flywheel bolted back on. That was a added surprise. But we got it on there. Using my little magnetic light up here. But yeah, that sounds so much better. It was really laboring before, and sometimes it just wasn't charging at all. But now I think we've got that sorted. We've got the big heavy wires going all the way to the electrical system. Now we need to get some grounds. We've got grounds to the body somewhere. Yeah, down here we got grounds to the body. Over here. We've got everything we need. It's just this. There's also a strap back there that goes from the motor to the firewall, but for some reason I'm not getting very good grounds in there. I'm having a hard time finding stuff under the dash to ground to. So I'm going to run just a big, probably a number 10 or something, just a ground wire straight from the battery, straight inside the cab of the car, and maybe a little ground bus in there to ground all my stereo and gauges. And later on, when we get a new wiring harness, we'll have something to run our fuel injection something off around. That's the whole point of getting this thing amped up, so we can run some fuel injection, probably Phytech. Something like that. Boy, that's dirty. Look at that. Just nasty. And I got to work on our fueling too. This thing is flooding like you wouldn't believe. Really rich. I think the butterflies on the bottom are about a quarter of the way open, and they shouldn't be. You don't get a good idle circuit when they're opened up like that. I'm also going to work on this fender. and probably sand and block this hood, because this is a 76. It's got a Yenko stripe. This is not supposed to have a Yenko stripe. I don't like it. I don't want it. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to probably go, I don't know, paint it all black if I do paint it, or paint it back its original color, which is kind of a burgundy oxblood color. You can see it on the dash here. That's what color the car actually was. I don't know. We'll see. But I've got new fenders. I would like to try to straighten this one out just to see if I can, because it's pretty good. That one over there's got Bondo all in it. This one's all metal. There's no rust in this fender. It looks like it had some work done at one time, but there's no cracking or nothing in it. We'll sand it down and see. But we're going to end it here tonight. We've got our charging system on. We've got our new Power Master. It's supposed to be 150. Looks like it charges at about 160 on the top end. So I'd say we'll be around 100, 140 all the time. So, you know, that's good. That's a good thing. And then this cheap Chinesium, you know, whatever happens to it, who knows. I thought about taking it in and seeing what they charge to rebuild it, just to have a spare. And plus it's chrome. It's not ugly. But, and I'm sure I paid plenty for it when I bought it. But they're way cheaper now than they were then. I don't know why. Sip of water, I'm drying out. Okay, guys. I do appreciate you guys hanging out. And I thank you for stopping by. And I love these old cars. I hope you do too. And I hope you love hanging out with us. Subscribe if you ain't already. And you get to see more stuff that we're doing just piddling around here in the garage. Thanks to you guys for hanging out and riding along. Stay clean, everybody.